And then the last of the 7 is environmental toxicity. We live in such a toxic world, environmental toxins, plastics, flame retardants, pesticides, herbicides, lead, mercury. Oh my gosh, they are just terrible for the system. And that's one reason why we have such profound health issues, because these environmental toxins are really creating inflammation in our system and create inflammation of some of the very worst spots in the system that will drive chronic disease.
Hello, and this is John Brink, and we are podcasting on the Brink from downtown Prince George, British Columbia, Canada. And for all those people from around the world that are watching us, it is from Canada and British Columbia. Everybody knows Canada and obviously British Columbia and Vancouver. Where is Prince George? We are about 500 miles north of Vancouver in the center of British Columbia, an amazing province. For all those people that visit Canada, go to northern BC. It's an amazing, amazing place. And the city is Prince George. Today we have a very, very special guest. His name is Dr. David Bilstrom, and he has an amazing biography. Dr. Bilstrom has helped thousands of chronically ill patients reversing autoimmune disease and a lot of other things in a lot of studies. Too much for even me to start to try to read up. So David, can I call you David, Dr. David?
Please, that would be my honor.
Okay, so I'll let you kind of give us the background on you, David, and then we'll kind of start from there.
Well, thank you. Well, first I want to say I was a Division I tennis player.
Oh my goodness!
A shout out to TCU, and I'm currently in a hotel room for the NCAA Men's Basketball Championship, and all 3 of my alma maters are still in TCU, where I went to college, University of Illinois, where I went to med school, and then University of Colorado when I went to residency. So once in a lifetime, all 3 of my teams are in the NCAA tournament. But I became a physician, and I am trying to, we're making a good dent so far in revolutionizing the way that autoimmune disease is dealt with worldwide, rather than using sort of medicines that put a bit of a bandage on a couple symptoms, but then not getting it at the underlying issue. You get more autoimmune disease, more chronic disease, and those typical meds increase your cancer risk, your risk of life-threatening infections that can actually give you a new autoimmune disease. So what we're trying to do is teach people that we know the science is very clear where this stuff comes from, and we're in a position to reverse it once it starts, but in a perfect world, prevent it in the first place, including if an adult has an autoimmune disease or a chronic disease. We like to see the children and stop them from ever having to deal with it, or we see children actually and adults from 21 time zones around the world, cutest little 10-month, 5-month-old children with rheumatoid arthritis, juvenile rheumatoid arthritis, need the size of a basketball. We want to reverse it in them, but then because the stuff runs in families so much, then we see the parents to make sure they don't end up getting an autoimmune disease later in life, because oftentimes actually the children show up with the health issues even before the parents might show up with them.
Now, autoimmune disease, what does that really mean for the layperson? And I love what you're doing, because I believe you're being, and obviously we all, I'm 83 going on 84, so I've been around for a while and I've seen all the ups and downs. I was born in Holland and then spent time in Canada, and I'm being fairly active and proactive as a family. My wife is vegan and very much into health and knowledge about it, is that we're becoming, I believe, much more reactive rather than more preventive rather than reactive, and I believe that is the right direction to go, and gradually the world seems to be changing in that direction, and the public in general seems to be more acceptable, at least listening to it and taking advice that is so plentiful out there, and that's why an individual like yourself that has such an issue or so much experience in those areas is so important on this podcast.
You're right. Like in a lot of industries, the consumers drive change within the industry, and the medical industry, I think, is very similar. Is they're not very proactive, more reactive. Oh, we're not going to do anything to prevent your issue, but once you get it, we'll give you a medicine. They'll put a bandage on it. But the consumers are actually driving the change in medicine, where they're like, well, I've seen my parents and grandparents have health issues that I wouldn't wish on my worst enemy. I want to find somebody that can tell me how I can make sure that doesn't happen to me or my children. And hopefully we'll get into it, how I can do things, including what I might be able to do as an adult before I have children that would actually change the health of the next 6 to 8 generations after me.
Exactly.
And so autoimmune disease, the immune system is ideally designed to protect us from things that are not us. So let's say an infection gets in us. Well, that bug is not us. The immune system makes antibodies that would attack that bad bug, kill it, get it out of our system.
Right.
So like if you get a cold virus that gets in, you don't need to have a cold virus making you feel really bad for the next 20 years. Right? The immune system attacks it, gets rid of it. Within a couple of days, we're fine again. When one of our cells turns to a cancer cell, it's not us anymore. The immune system dives in, kills it, gets rid of it. And this is where ideally, on average, people get cancer at least 7 times in a lifetime. But you should be able to get to 90, hold your hand up and say, I've never had cancer my entire life. But what you're really saying is I probably had it on average 7 times, but my immune system did its job and jumped in, killed it, got rid of it before it ever had a chance to multiply, grow, and be diagnosed. So this immune system, this part of the immune system called the adaptive immune system, can get confused. And it gets confused and it starts making antibodies attacking our own body parts.
Right.
And when you attack a body part, you hurt it and start destroying it basically, and then it can't do its work. So it might be like Hashimoto's, where you attack the thyroid. It doesn't make thyroid hormone anymore. Now, ideally, you can take a thyroid medicine, but let's say you attack the brain, like multiple sclerosis. Well, you're going to attack the brain, destroy the brain. Well, we can't just give you a new brain. Like we could give you a new thyroid, some thyroid hormone, or you attack other body parts, juvenile rheumatoid arthritis, adult rheumatoid arthritis. You attack the joints, you destroy the joints. So basically, I talk about, well, you're basically self-destructing. If you're attacking your own body parts, you're self-destructing, and it's never going to be a good idea to self-destruct.
No.
Counterproductive to feeling good is to self-destruct.
Yeah.
And fortunately, and then the other part of the immune system is called the innate immune system, and that's involved in inflammation control. And we know that excessive inflammation in any body part creates disease. And
example?
So everything.
Okay.
Wherever you have excessive inflammation, if you have excessive inflammation of the joint, you got a joint issue. Excessive inflammation of the brain, you got brain fog, depression, anxiety, those kind of things. Excessive inflammation in your eyes, eye issues within blood vessels, heart attack and stroke risk. And so between the adaptive and the innate immune system, we protect the body from excessive inflammation. We protect the body from things that are not us. But if we start attacking our own body parts, the more traditional autoimmune disease attacking body parts, or if we can't get rid of excessive inflammation and it builds and starts destroying tissue, that's where the immune system, in the last 10 years, we realized that the immune system is part of every chronic disease. When I lecture, I use a great quote from this article where they're talking about atherosclerosis, hardening of the arteries that would drive heart attack and stroke. And they said, we used to consider this hardening of the arteries basically as an inevitable consequence of aging. But there's nothing inevitable about it. It is, like all disease, it is an inflammatory, infectious process that creates chronic disease. And so it's the inflammation, but also infections, not the infections that drive obvious disease, typically with like high fever and that kind of stuff. There's infections that drive chronic disease. And we can test for them on blood work. We can test for them on other testing. But we know that there's infections that drive all chronic disease. And then the inflammation that comes from infection and other things that drives all chronic disease. Well, we're in a position to make sure that doesn't happen, prevention, or reverse it if it's already well established.
Now, in terms of prevention, then, David, part of that likely is lifestyle and doing all the elements of having good lifestyle, and the other one is recognizing it in time so that you can be preemptive. But if it is traditionally, what you would do is take medicine of some sort that may solve one problem and create 5 other ones, or something along those lines. So that how does somebody like I'm very proactive. I go to the gym. I have all the elements of good life. I always say I'm going to live till I'm 120. So that is the most important. Not so much the 120, but how do you get to quality of life becomes the issue, and especially people like myself, the last decade of your life, that where you still have, I'm writing a book about it actually, this one here, Living Young, Dying Old, and it's coming out in July. I'm going to send you a copy of it and sign it for you, but that's a picture of me actually. And so
I like it very much.
Yeah, and saying that it's not the number, but it's quality of life, and how do I stay fit? So what I do is I go to the gym, in my particular case, and I work out very, very hard. I have a clean diet. I'm somewhat of a vegetarian. I call myself 80-20, and do all the elements that I can do to stay fit. So what should a person do on a regular basis, making sure that he does the basic elements of staying fit and is not abusive to the body, but what else can he do to be proactive in terms of looking forward and saying, I have to make sure that especially the elements that you raise of immune disease, the 10 elements or whatever they are, that how can you be preemptive of that in terms of lifestyle?
Yeah, and you're so right on point where it's so challenging to be healthy nowadays. It's not your chronological age, it's more your physiologic range. And
Right.
you can be 25 years old and feel like you're 225. There's so many sick people, sick children, sick young people, where historically it used to be, more of the older people that would have health issues. But then again, a couple of generations ago, you could do everything wrong and still stay pretty healthy. Like somebody gets to be like 85 years of age and they go, geez, I've been smoking 2 packs of cigarettes a day since I was 15. I hear that cigarettes are bad for you. I probably should stop. I hear that exercise is good. I've never exercised. If I want to stay healthy as an 85-year-old, maybe I should start exercising.
Drinking.
I hear this fried food's not so good, drinking, etc. So maybe I'm going to pull back my drinking, not eat so much fried foods, because I'm 85 and I want to stay healthy. Well, they're 85 and they're already healthy, and they're going like, geez, maybe I should change my lifestyle. But nowadays, you get so many young people, 20s, 30s, they're doing everything they can to help themselves be healthy, and they still have all these chronic health issues. It's crazy how challenging it is to be healthy. And so because we know how hard it is to stay healthy, if you're not doing something actively to stay healthy, you're really getting in a bad place early. And so we talk about the 7 central mechanisms. The first is the gut, and the gut is a super central mechanism. One of the primary important factors about gut health is what they call the intestinal microbiome, that mix of good, bad bugs in the gut. Now, that mix of good, bad bugs in the gut, though, oversees so much of the body, including every body part has its own unique microbiome, a mix of good and bad bugs. And so, like the palm of your dominant hand is going to be different than the palm of your non-dominant hand, back of the hand palm, elbow crease, under the arm, all different microbiomes, but they're unique. And so a big thing you'll hear about is things like, let's say, the breast tissue. Well, it has its own particular microbiome. Well, if the intestinal microbiome gets disrupted, it causes what they call leaky gut, or more technically, intestinal permeability disorder. And bad bugs, like some viruses called adenoviruses, for example, will translocate through the leaky gut wall into the bloodstream, go to the breast tissue, and disrupt the breast microbiome. So they talk about the intestinal microbiome, breast axis. Well, when that gets disrupted like that, it increases breast cancer risk. If those bad bugs go to the cells in the pancreas, that will cause the pancreas not to make insulin, type 1 diabetes. You got the intestinal microbiome, pancreatic beta islet cell axis. Well, that drives type 1 diabetes. And so the intestinal microbiome being just right is so important of keeping the microbiomes right in every other body part too.
So if you're talking about gut, you're talking really about, correct me if I'm wrong, on your digestive system. Is that, and then leaky gut, I've heard the term, means that, let me give you an example that everybody needs a trigger. For somebody like myself that has not really paid as much attention to well-being and getting older, and then health is so important, is that it took me till my wife was always very proactive, and but I didn't listen as well as I should have and could have, and now am. You need that trigger that gets your attention, and so in 2008, and I was already 68 years old, I got a big warning that I had diverticulitis, and that ruptured. And so, and for lay persons, and maybe you can confirm that, then there is the large colon that ruptures and it spreads through your gut in a way, and is infectious potentially, and you need attention very, very quickly. So I fortunately got to a hospital soon enough, but I came that close actually to not making it, but it gave me attention to pay more attention to my health and well-being, and and so I was already 68 years old, and and I started to go in a serious way, looking at diet, going to more of a plant-based diet, and then at the same time hire a trainer and go to the gym in a serious way. We were always doing the same. At the end of the year, we make commitments in terms of what we're going to do. We're going to do this, that, and the other thing. We're going to get a membership to the gym. And then after 2 weeks, we can find 100 reasons why we can't go anymore until the following year. So, but I didn't do that. I once became very serious about it, went to the gym. And then after I'd been training for about 6 years, somebody said, have you ever thought about competing? And I did, because it gives me a goal, and hence the picture there. But I qualified for the Nationals and the Arnolds, and now again, at nearly 84 years old, I'm again getting ready for the gym and competing again at the Arnolds in 2025, and I'm 85. The point that I was going to make is, drifting away a little bit, is that I just wanted to indicate to you the trigger for me was, and especially looking at younger people, even in my own age, although I was not overly abusive, but I was not doing as much as I could do proactively. My wife was, but I wasn't, until the trigger brought me very close to, being in real danger of dying for that matter. And so that then brought me to the path of changing my life, which I did, and those areas, and diet, exercise, all those other elements. And so the message is, that's why it is so important to have somebody like yourself that has such an amazing experience, and saying that even if you're in your, hopefully earlier, but 30s, 40s, 50s, but even in 60s, it is never too late to say, okay, it's time for me to turn around. You don't have to become a champion, bodybuilder, or anything. It's not about that. At least get some exercise, even 20 minutes a day, half an hour a day. Look at your diet. Do all those things that makes you proactive. And then the other part, that's why our podcast is so important, explaining from an expert that sees this on a daily basis, and especially in regards to immune disease issues, that become knowledgeable and aware. Because a lot of times, with all the information out there, there is so much information that it is difficult for a layperson to, to say, well, what should I do? And I think that, to me, is one of the missions in my life, to share with the world and saying, these are the directions to go, and here are the experts that can give us that direction.
I think there's several really good points you make there, John. One is we talked about inflammation driving all chronic health issues. When you say diverticulitis, the itis, itis at the end just means inflammation. Right. So you had excessive inflammation driving chronic health issue. Now, the gut is such a central mechanism. In some people, the gut symptoms could be, oh, I got something going on I need to fix. But the gut's such a central mechanism, it can show up, the gut can be a total mess, but people have no gut symptoms are showing up as everything else. So like the gut-brain connection is really strong. Anytime somebody's got any kind of brain stuff going on, we kind of talk about enough brain stuff to get in the way of stuff, whether it's memory, concentration, depression, anxiety, bipolar, schizophrenia, seizures, migraines, you name the brain thing. First thing I'm thinking is what's going on with the gut.
Wow.
Skin and gut are really connected. 95% of all skin issues, I'm thinking what's going on with the gut. And because 80% of the immune system surrounds the gut, anytime I see any immune system stuff, I'm thinking what's going on with the gut. Even though somebody may have no gut symptoms, the gut's such a central mechanism, it's showing up as everything else. So I would say that anybody with any kind of health issue, the first thing you need to think about is what's going on with the gut, even if you have no guts whatsoever.
And do you then also think, or do you think then diet primarily, or are there other issues that you're thinking about?
Yeah. So then this takes us to the second central mechanism, which is the stress hormone cortisol. Okay. Cortisol, the stress hormone made by the adrenal glands that sit on top of the kidney, ideally it's there so it kicks up in a little high when we get into the stress mode, the fight or flight mode, life or death mode. It's kind of like there's a bear chasing me trying to kill me mode. Well, it kicks up because cortisol, among other things, will convert to cortisone, which is a steroid hormone in your body that your body makes to get rid of inflammation. So it goes up, down, up, down, up, down. The problem is when you get enough health issues going on, physical stress, now long-term emotional stress can do it as well. And I'd love to talk about, like, for example, we'll hopefully get to the Dutch hunger winter of 1944, 1945, which it sounds like you lived through, thank God. Yeah. Cortisol can get kicked up and stay kicked up. It gets stuck in the stress mode. Then it becomes very inefficient at getting converting from cortisol to cortisone. We start getting all this inflammation. Well, then what happens is because cortisol gets kicked up in the stress mode, it actually suppresses the immune system. And we start getting these infections, the sneaky, silent infections that will drive chronic disease. Things like the Epstein-Barr virus, herpes virus 6, mycoplasma, Coxsackie virus, these kind of things. Now you got an infection, start trying to drive inflammation, different body parts. Got to get rid of it. We actually use a product out of Canada for that. It's unbelievable. And then because of the stress hit the gut, it creates this leaky gut that creates food sensitivities. And then we have foods bothering us potentially in an obvious way that anybody can figure out themselves because they get sick every time they eat it, or this delayed hypersensitivity reaction where you eat a food and it's just a protein, but days later or up to a month later, you haven't even eaten the food for an entire month, it all of a sudden whacks you with inflammation. Well, if you don't know the food's bothering you, because it whacks you with inflammation production a month later, you keep eating it until this inflammation will grow. And then people say, geez, I'm really feeling poorly. I got all this inflammation. I know it's got to be coming from someplace. But I know it's not what I'm eating because nothing makes me feel sick. Well, it doesn't make you feel sick in the obvious way. It's the sneaky way.
Right.
And we can do testing, a simple little finger prick test to find out what foods are bugging somebody sneaky. So somebody may be eating a food that they're only eating for health reasons, like broccoli or cauliflower. Well, that broccoli, yeah, inherently it might be unbelievably great for people, but you individually, it's killing you with this delayed hypersensitivity reaction to foods that are driving inflammation control. And then you get vitamin deficiencies because the gut can't absorb nutrients from your food any longer. Even if you're eating really high quality, nutrient rich foods, you're avoiding the crud food out there. You may not even get the nutrients out. And then it starts throwing off your hormones. And we have this huge hormone symphony in humans that we want just right. Well, it starts throwing off the symphony of hormones. And hormones, we need to make them our whole life because they keep away excessive inflammation. And by doing that, they keep away disease. And then the last of the seven is environmental toxicity. We live in such a toxic world, environmental toxins, plastics, flame retardants, pesticides, herbicides, lead, mercury. Oh my gosh, they are just terrible for the system. And that's one reason why we have such profound health issues, because these environmental toxins are really creating inflammation in our system and create inflammation in some of the very worst spots in the system that will drive chronic disease. So the gut's part of all that happens, and the gut needs to be fixed so you can fix everything else.
So are we becoming more proactive with that, David? Like, I forget now, about a month ago or so, I was podcasting somebody about same issues in terms of toxins in this plastic and plastic bottles of water. My wife already doesn't allow any plastics in the house virtually. It's hard to avoid, but much less so all the time. And because even that part, again, it may sound so minor, so minute, but if it gets into your system, it's still something that doesn't belong there. And if you can avoid it, you should avoid it. Now, the other part about it is like, for me, I focus on plant-based foods. I stay away. If I go shopping, amazingly, my wife being very strict, I do all the shopping, and she trusts me in doing that. I go around the center, not in the center of the store, on the outside, all to the plant-based. I don't do red meat or pork or anything like that, and mainly plant-based food, not processed food, for all the obvious reasons. And so that's a good thing. But are we becoming more aware of where we should go and being preemptive? And is the information becoming more and more available, and partially because of things that we do, but as well as many, many other people, is making people aware of it, and a simple way of doing things and say, these are the obvious ones that you should not be doing. This one, that one, and the other one, and then add to that this, that, and the other, and so that you can be proactive, not reactive. And it looks to me in a way that, as you were saying, if I look back a generation or even two, in my case, where my grandparents in Holland, they seldom would go to the store. They only go there to pick up either pepper or salt or sugar, not much sugar, and the rest they grew themselves, and that's what they did. Now virtually all the things that we do are from the store, and a lot of people are not very healthy. But the information is available, but people are not as proactive as they can be. We're going in the right direction, but we still have a way to go. And I believe this is where the dialogue will be as we go forward. Most people, and as people like you yourself are saying, and as I'm saying, I'm obviously not a doc, but just a consumer that has been around and looking at it, is there is no reason. I'm virtually 84, and I still work 12, 13 hours a day. And I'm very, very active. Get up at 5:30 in the morning. Always think I'm late. Always make my bed. I'm writing books, 10 different companies. And people say to me, "How do you do it?" Now I throw another thing into the mix that you may already know. I'm also ADHD, which I call a superpower, actually, by the way. And if people say to me, how do you do all this stuff? I say, well, it's ADHD. But the other part is that healthy living and going to the gym and basically eating a plant-based diet, being very conscientious, not abusing my body that is so immensely forgiving up to a certain extent. And I'm trying to take now care of that body to bring me to 90, 100, and keeping me healthy.
Yeah, basically what I kind of call the foods in the middle of the grocery store food-like substances. They're not even food. They're more like food-like substances.
Exactly.
They have no nutrient value, whereas on the outside, that's where the food is. And it's so important when you're talking about like what you put in, what you're basically talking about is you're putting in information. And we know a lot about longevity nowadays. And what we want to do is in our genes, in our DNA, it's in our cells that tells the cells what to do. We have a lot of bad genes. You got to turn those off. We have a lot of good genes you got to turn on. So it turns out it's not what genes we have, it's actually which ones get turned on and turned off.
Right.
Called epigenetics, the things that influence gene expression without changing the genetic code. And I referenced the Dutch hunger winter of 1944, 1945, and it taught us a lot about epigenetics because the Dutch hunger winter flipped bad genes on and good genes off, and people that lived through that have more health issues than people that didn't go through that. But we now know that epigenetics is passed down from generation to generation. And so the Dutch hunger winter, we can see multiple generations who are less healthy than people that did not go through the Dutch hunger winter. We see the same thing with Holocaust, descendants of Holocaust survivors, because they got flipped the wrong way. Now, we know that we can flip them the right way. So like what you eat flips them the right way. Getting out in nature, resetting that cortisol, doing your deep breathing, it flips genes the right way. Harvard did a beautiful study on epigenetics and meditation about 16 years ago.
Right.
Now, interestingly enough, that Dutch hunger winter also told us something really important about wheat, proteins, and gluten, because there was no wheat for that entire year for a big population. And we can see the epigenetics because of starvation being adversely affected. But interestingly enough, there was a lot less celiac disease and autoimmune disease in the people that lived through the Dutch hunger winter because they went a whole year without eating wheat proteins.
Right.
And when they started going, well, this population doesn't really get celiac disease, which is where wheat becomes like battery acid bad, and it's an autoimmune disease that attacks the small intestine, they go, wow, these people didn't eat wheat for an entire year. They're not getting celiac and other autoimmune disease. Wow, there must be something about the proteins in wheat, including gluten. There's 62 different kinds, gluten's one, that is not great for humans. And it turns out it creates a lot of inflammation in the gut. And if you're not good at getting rid of inflammation, wheat, proteins, gluten included, will build up inflammation in your gut. And then you get all these autoimmune things, the gustocentral central mechanisms. So it actually taught us a lot about how we can avoid autoimmune and chronic disease, even though it's a lot about how genes get flipped through adverse events, starvation included, that drive multi-generational disease. This is where you kind of hear things like, we live the trauma of past generations. But we know what we got to do to flip the genes the right way. And by doing that the right way, we really think that humans, I always kind of talk to people about how, well, nothing is age related till at least you're 90. If it's before 90, it's not age, it's something. We should be able to address it and fix it because it's not age. But really, it looks like human body's designed to live 107, 118 years if epigenetically we're in a really good place. And quality of life, like you mentioned, not life, but quality of life.
I read in an article or a book in the United States, a doc or a group of people, docs, did a study on 100,000 biopsy studies, and of the 100,000 they studied or looked at, not a single one of them died of old age. I found that very...
Well, when you see how ill our children are nowadays and young people, you go, oh my gosh, it is so hard to stay healthy nowadays. It is such a challenge. We know how to do it, but we got to start doing it. Yep.
So are we somewhat like, if I look back to my grandparents, as I said earlier, that virtually grew everything that they needed, not because they were so well off they could do it, just the opposite, because they had no other choice. And so they
Mm-hmm.
had no plastic bottles and they didn't have anything. They grew it all. And so that we and then most of my grandparents died when they were in their early 80s, likely. And so, and have we gone now to the point where we're starting to rely on so many other things, external things, but not dealing with the keeping the body healthy? But have we gone now to the point where a lot of people are not healthy, really, and have
Yeah.
no healthy lifestyles, and more information is becoming available, articles, books, on and over again, how to extend your life and quality of life, and people are buying the books and looking at the books, but they're still not doing it in a serious way, although we're gradually moving in that direction. Are we still going there? Because looking around, and I spend a lot of times in airports, you do too, I'm sure, and I sometimes look around and I say, my God, there are a lot of unhealthy people.
Mm-hmm. And the body is so smart. I would be perfect, just perfect enough. And a little bit goes a really long way. So if you're talking about, let's say, getting out in nature, meditation, well, Harvard said, well, that flips genes the right way. That prevents and fixes everything. Hey, if you change how you eat, don't eat food like substances, eat real food. Oh my
Right.
gosh, that the body loves that. It'll take you. So when you're doing these kind of things like eating healthy, getting exercise, getting out in nature, resetting cortisol, getting good sleep, um, you should feel great. If you
Yeah.
don't, there's got to be a really specific reason why.
Yeah.
And then that's what we want to teach people is, well, okay, the gut's the central mechanism. There must be something off there if I'm doing this lifestyle stuff and I'm not feeling great. There's got to be
Right.
something that's getting in the way of my body fixing all this. Because if you can get out of the way what's in the way, the body goes, hot dog, I've been waiting to do this. I can fix anything.
Right.
And so we'd like to teach people, like we have two different levels of courses for non-medical people about where this stuff comes from and how to fix the gut, how to reset cortisol, how to get rid of the infections, how to figure out what foods are bugging you. And then, yes, we got to get you doing lifestyle stuff if you're not doing it already, because that's so important. If you're not doing lifestyle stuff, oh my goodness, it's so hard for the body to fix anything, even if you're doing the right stuff. If you do the lifestyle stuff or even a little bit of it and you're not seeing any benefit, there's a good reason, but you should be able to fix it. And then your body starts really moving towards wellness.
So is it not in a sense, David, when 20, 30 years ago, 40 years ago, and I was thinking about it the other day, and I used to smoke way back then, but if I look back, smoking was done all the time. I could
Mm-hmm.
not imagine anybody having a cigarette and stepping into my car. It's just inconceivable. And so
Or on an
much
airplane,
less,
smoking on an airplane.
yeah, it's simply not being done. But is it in a way not that the obvious things, like smoking, obviously, drinking too much, and all those other obvious elements that we can deal with, and same as people say, well, I don't have the time to go to gyms, and no, you don't have to. At least be active for even 20 minutes a day. Go for a walk. Firm
Yeah.
walk. Do it every day if you can. Start with four
Keep
days a week,
moving.
5 days. Yeah, that all, and eat healthy food. Yeah, don't go to the center aisles because those are processed foods and they are not really food. And be more aware of the food that you eat, and then all of a sudden you're going in the right direction. And additional information, as you said, will become available, and these bodies that we have are so precious and so forgiving up to a certain point, and they say, okay, I've given you lots of messages. We don't go any further, and from here on in, it's up to you where you go. But it is available to all of us in a simple way, going in that direction.
And if you have a health issue and your body hasn't been able to fix it on its own, there's a really good reason, because the body's always trying, it always moves towards wellness. We kind of talk about, well, if you walk around your house in bare feet and you kick a chair leg, you're going to start hopping around in terrible toe pain.
Yeah.
But inherently, we know we can fix stuff because we're not thinking, oh, great, I'm going to have this terrible toe pain for the next 50 years. 1 or 2 minutes, it goes away. I try not to do that again. But then we get these other health issues, and it's really easy for us to think, oh, well, that's just part of getting old, or that's just how it's going to be. My parents had that, whatever. I see my neighbors get that. That's just how it is. It's like, no. Something's gotten in the way. So we might see somebody who is in their 80s, and they have a major problem, 2, 3, 5. And I talk to them about all the things going on. Well, this classic example was a lovely woman in her 80s, mid 80s, all these health issues, but she also had ringing in the ears. And I asked her about it. I said, well, what about this ringing in the ears? She goes, oh, well, I've had that since I was 6 years of age. It's bad, but what are you going to do? You just got to get used to it. So I'm not expecting anything with that. So we go, okay. So first visit, we go, okay, let's make a couple food changes, a couple nutritional changes. We know we're going to be dealing with infections. So we're going to start you on this broad spectrum antimicrobial made out of Canada. Oh my gosh, the gentleman that developed this, he is a genius. It's a nano-silver product with structured water. Structured water is actually what they call the fourth phase of water. It's not just solid, liquid, or gas. The fourth phase of water has to do with the biophysics of water molecules that allows it to get rid of inflammation and help damaged tissue heal. At the same time, the nano-silver gets rid of these infections that drive chronic disease. So she comes back 6 weeks later.
Is that water that is available in the stores, or is it
not in stores, but online? It's called pH structured silver solution.
I've never heard of it.
As far as I understand it, is Canada, the highest rating that Canada can give something for its therapeutic value was actually given to this, and it's the only non-pharmaceutical thing ever by the Canadian government gave to this pH structured silver solution. There's so much data about its benefit, they really couldn't say no, even though, as I understand it, they wanted to say no because they don't really say yes to things that are not pharmaceutical industry stuff. But it is a total game changer when it comes to this chronic disease, because it gets rid of the infections that drive chronic disease. Even if you're not sure what infection you got inflammation, you got infection, like I mentioned for atherosclerosis earlier. They're all inflammation and infection. So we started getting rid of the infections. 6 weeks later, she came back.
Yeah.
She's already starting to feel some better. It goes, a little better here and there. My energy's a little better. The brain fog's a little better. And I go, good. And I ask her, so what about the ringing in your ears? She stops and goes, oh my gosh, it's gone. Oh my gosh, it's gone. I've had that since I was 6 years of age. And I'm looking at my paper. I go, yeah, I know. I got it right here.
Amazing.
And it was a great teaching moment, because I was able to tell her, I says, see, you've had this for almost 80 years. Your body the entire time has been waiting for its opportunity to fix this. It's just sitting there and says, if you can get this thing out of the way, that's in the way, I can fix it. Bang, it took care of it, even though it was 80 years. And so no matter how long you've had something, your body's ready to fix it. You just got to give it the chance. And fortunately, the science is very clear now about what gets in the way of the body healing. And thus, if you're doing these level things and you just don't still feel your best, there's something that's getting in the way, but we should be able to get it out of the way.
Yeah. So the interesting part about this program is, David, that there we are sitting here, and I'm talking about the internet and virtual interaction. I used to do a lot of speaking. You probably did too, and I go all over the place and make keynote presentations, different issues, and it usually takes me 2 days to get there and then get back and all the other things. But then I got very involved in podcasting and on a number of issues, and one of them very much close to my life and my mind is the healthcare system and how to stay fit and healthy, hence I wrote the book about it, is that, and have guests like yourself interacting here and talking about it from a lay perspective, being me, to an expert like yourself in North America or in the world, and they'll be sitting having this interaction, and all the while we know that it is not just you and me that have this hour-long discussion. We know already that from around the world we got tens of thousands of people watching us in this discussion. So I love that platform and that vehicle that allows us to interact like this, because that will help the direction for people that say, well, it's too complicated, I don't know what to do, and they say this and then they say that, and start out with the relatively simple areas, and start early if you can, but even in your 30s and 40s or before that, start thinking about it, longevity and the potential of quality of life, if not only for yourself but also for your family and all those people that care about you. Is that they don't want to see you laying on the couch and saying, well, life is over, right? More or less. My foundation has always been, when I came to Canada what brought me to Canada, I just want to share that with you, and you may have seen it on some of the other ones, is that, but it means a lot to me, and you refer to it. I was born in November the 1st, 1940, and obviously it was during the war years, and things were difficult and a challenge, and the hunger winter in particular, 1944-45, was difficult, was the coldest winter on record, and the Germans then had cut off all the food supply to put pressure on a country like Holland and the Allied forces to stop them with their invasion. But I still remember hundreds of planes of the Allied forces bombing Germany, and we were only 15 kilometers from the border, and we could see in the distance the cities burning way in the distance. And then at the same time, as kids, I was the youngest, and then my sister was 1 year old, my brother 2 years old, but every morning we would go with gunny bags into the railroad yards, picked up anything edible and burnable. And the reason that we did as kids, they would not shoot us, but they would put us one in the back, and then we just came back the following day. But even still today, now nearly 80 years ago, I could still feel the feeling of hunger, and I can still feel the cold, because all we had is this little heater in one small room, because that's all we could do is heat, and I still can feel the intense cold and heat from that little heater. And then the other part that played a big part in my life, was anxiety of losing. My dad had been drafted into the Dutch army, and for 5 years they didn't know if he had survived the bombing of Rotterdam, so it was just my mother and the 3 kids, and the fear of losing her, I actually got counseling for the inner child well into my 50th, and very emotional, but quite something, and PTSD. But the point that I was going to make, and we were liberated by the Canadians April the 12th, 1945, and I knew from that point forward I would go to the lands of my heroes, Canada. And so that was my dream, and from the time that I was 5 years old. And then my dad worked in the lumber, and my grandfather was a master carpenter. And then the other dream that I had, I would build my own lumber mill in Canada, and then you have to go to British Columbia. That's where all the timber is, I thought. And then the other part that played a role is that I was academically not very successful. I failed grade 3 and failed grade 7 3 times, and kids are hard on each other, right? So that when my friends that used to be my friends went to college and universities, and I became a laborer. I'm proud of that today, but then I wasn't. But it took me a long time till I was in January 1997, I walked into a bookstore here. I picked up a book, and the book's title was Driven to Distraction by Dr. Halliwell. And Dr. Halliwell is very well known as a speaker and an author of at least 18 books, 5 of them on the distraction issues. And I looked at that book and it said ADHD, and I said, oh my God, that's me. And so I wrote in the book, I still have it. Dr. Halliwell wrote the book in 1993. I bought it in 1997 here in Prince George, and wrote in the book in Dutch. Now I finally know who I am, because I was ashamed of it, because it was considered to be maybe a mental issue of some description, and so the more I found out about it, the more I found that it's a superpower. And so talking a little bit more about it is that, so then with my dream of going to Canada, I wanted to start with nothing, because I still felt that I was not successful. I knew I could do things just as well as everybody else could. And so I went to Canada with $150, 3 books, 2 sets of clothes, $150 Canadian when I left Amsterdam. When I came into Prince George, a couple of blocks away from here, 60 years ago, I had my book, my suitcase, 3 books, 2 sets of clothes, and I counted my money at least 3 times. I had $25.47. But what I had plenty of is attitude. No matter what happens, I'm, how tough today is, I'm always swearing tomorrow will be a better day. I had passion. Whatever I do, I give it 150%. And the other one was work ethic. I say I work harder than anybody. And those are kind of my foundation. It has always been my foundation. Attitude, passion, work ethic. And then I say we're living in paradise. I fly around here a lot, and I love North America, and because we are so immensely blessed with where we live and what we do, and I'm not always sure that people fully appreciate it, because if you have seen war and you lived war, that a lot of people think that war is over and then everything goes back to normal. Well, it simply doesn't. I'm an example of that likely. It may take generations before it even gets back, if even then, and saying that at all costs, try to, the democratic system may have its faults, and from time to time, and frustrations that go with it, but it's much better than the alternative being dictatorships. And if you wonder about it, not you, but in a general sense, then look at Russia, look at North Korea, look at Iran, look at Venezuela, Cuba, and for that matter, China, and those kind of places. I do not believe in a serious way that we want the alternative. And to me, it's always not being political about it, but for me, it's very important to share that with the people that have not been there. I was there, I've seen it, and still today.
Mm-hmm. And you had 3 books. Everybody should have at least 3 books. I like that idea too.
Yeah, and I'm working on the 4th and the 5th one actually, and so I love it. And people say to me, "How do you do it all?" I said, "Well, ADHD. That's why, So." But the part that we talked about is so important, David. At least in the podcasting that I do, and especially as it relates to lifestyle, fitness and well-being, those issues in particular, I'm excited about having you on my podcast, and other people that are like-minded. And I believe that gradually people become more aware as they hear people like yourself and others in that category. But you're an example of around the world of hearing your interpretation of well-being and fitness. It's amazing. And yeah.
Well, thank you. I think it's so important that you're letting people know that you can feel good. You're not destined to feel bad, and if you feel bad, that's just the way it is. But truly, we know why people get health issues, and truly, we know how to reverse them. Even though that may not be the information they hear day in, day out, the more they hear it, the more empowered they should feel. That really, no matter what, boy, their body could fix this if they can just kind of put things together.
Be proactive and it does not mean that you have to go out of your way. It is relatively simple once you do it.
It is.
Extremely rewarding as you get up in the mornings and you feel good, and that creates that positivity about the individual and saying, age is just a number. And I sometimes get a little bit teed off, when I hear the media, in particular in the United States, with my friends, although I watch a lot of the United States news, but he's saying, well, this guy is this old and the other one is 82 or 83, and so therefore he's ready for the old man's house. That is nonsense. And I'm an example of that at 84. I still feel fit. I can run circles around other people. Age is just a number. It's being proactive in terms of having that type of a mindset. The information is available, and take charge of your life, and and saying that this body is so immensely forgiving and such a gift on its own.
A little bit goes a long way. If you kind of know where to put your efforts, it doesn't have to be a great effort, but if it's the right spot, kind of the essential mechanisms, the body just runs with it.
Yeah, and then going one step at a time, it makes you feel good. David, it was a privilege and a pleasure to have you on my show, and an amazing podcast. Our podcast will be today. It is Friday. Will it be available on Monday? Or yeah. So this one, we usually release it within 24 hours. If we do it on Fridays, we usually release it Monday morning. So it'd be available to all of your guests, and we will share it with the world. And it was amazing, and it is a privilege. And I'd like to stay in touch with you.
I'd like that as well. Thank you so much, John.
I'll send you copies of my books, and I sign them for you.
Oh, I like that. I like that.
David, a pleasure. Take care.
All right. Bye-bye now.
Bye-bye.